by revolutionizing. The future of American warfare is here, and it's spelled AI. As technologies advance, so do our adversaries. But here at the War Department, we are not sitting idly by. Under the leadership of President Trump, America will lead the charge on this technological transformation by revolutionizing the way we win. And that's why today we are unleashing GenAI.mil. This platform puts the world's most powerful frontier AI models, starting with Google Gemini, directly into the hands of every American warrior.
And frankly, with a governor that won't allow our wonderful Tina to come out of a jail, in a high-intensity jail, because she caught people cheating on an election, and they said she was cheating. She wasn't cheating. She went over, she looked at one of the election scams going on, and because she did that, they put her in jail for 9 years. The governor of Colorado is a weak and pathetic man who was run by Tren de Aragua, the criminals from Venezuela, took over sections of Colorado, and he was afraid to do anything. But he puts Tina in jail for 9 years because she caught people cheating. And when she walked over and got involved in it, they said she was cheating. She wasn't cheating. She caught people cheating on the election, 2020, along with a lot of other people that cheated on that election. You'll see that coming out more and more.
Hey everyone. So by now, being on this channel, discovering a lot of stuff, you understand the power of the Vatican, the power of the forces behind the Vatican, connected to the Roman Empire, connected to the Knights of Malta, Jesuits, these powerful operations that's connected to the Rothschilds, connected over to 33rd degree Masons, connected to United States leaders, and that directly connects to the CIA. Because, I gave you some videos telling you about how the Third Reich created, the CIA, connected to Bush, connected to OSS, and these operations of how Hitler was funded by the United States. Like I said, that's in the United States archives, that the United States funded Hitler. Prescott Bush, connected to J.P. Morgan. So these powerful operations gives you insight into funding World War I, World War II, big false flag operations to bring in control, of different leaders, different countries, through these massive false flag operations to create panic, to create new laws, new institutions, and like I said, to take over the government, and then all the institutions inside of the government, from the judicial systems all the way up to prime minister, presidents. So most people don't really know that inside of these operations of the deep state, connected back over to the to this little country that we keep talking about, that was created, through World War II, the small little country with the J. I have to be very careful in this time, because Patreon is going to do a lot of censorship. So the J people, where I'm talking about, Israel. Now we're not talking about the good people there. We're talking about the bad operations there. The Zion. These operations by them. Now it's well known inside of Mossad, inside of false flag operations. It's well known that they kill their own people. That's what happened with World War I. That's what happened with World War II. This huge, gigantic Holocaust of all of these people that were killed inside of Germany. These people killed their own people. The deep state, the cabal, initiated these operations. those operations carry on to this day, and they're actually written inside of directives. You have this thing called the Hannibal directive. This is directly from Israel, from inside intelligence, from inside military. They killed their own people. They killed their own military. And it's part of an older Masonic tradition that's connected to them. And that's why World War II was allowed to happen, to stage those false flag massive events. All of that was planned, And you hear about all this stuff even connected to Albert Pike from the 33rd degree Masons, saying that they're going to create a war, and within this war, then Israel will be formed. Then they're planning to build the United Nations, all of these different things. That was all connected, to what people call the deep state, to these cabal operations. So now, in the 21st century, those sacrificial moves to create false flag, Mossad, Israel, the deep state still have this thing that's called the Hannibal directives. That's where they're allowed to kill their own soldiers, to kill their own citizens, that it will benefit them. But like I said before, they gave it a name. This was part of their old society that was taught a long time ago inside of these really dark, horrendous operations of the cabal that people don't really know about.
These people honestly believe that they are the descendants of gods, that they are the chosen, that they are God's special people, that we are delusional, and that the true creator is this wisdom principle that they think of as Lucifer, that wisdom principle gave us ancient mystery school teachings, and that the enemy, which they call Adonai, the adversary, which we would call the Christian God, came to try to defeat them. Then they even take it a step further and they look at texts like the Bible and they say that where it says in the end times that God will take the money from the wicked and restore it to the just, that we as a planet are the wicked and they are the just. So this is how they justify their financial corruption. They don't believe that we deserve the money. In fact, they believe that if they did not dominate us and if they did not control us and play all these games, that we left to our own devices would destroy our planet. So in some twisted rationale, they believe they are saving the earth. They believe humans are bad for the environment. We cause pollution, so they have to reduce population. Then they seed that into movies like The Matrix, where Agent Smith says that that humans are like a virus on the planet. This is one of a variety of ways in which they will usually embed their teachings into the villain.
But talking about this stuff now, last month I gave you a huge, gigantic drop. I think a lot of people gave this information, including General Flynn. And we're talking about an attack was coming, huge attacks is going to come. And we all said it should be coming around the second week in December. And here we are. You saw what's happening. The United States soldiers were attacked in the Middle East. Some soldiers were killed. Trump said he's going to get revenge on that. Then you saw what happened in Australia with this attack. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. Then you saw what happened at Brown University, which is just a huge, gigantic false flag. There's too much coincidences inside of, especially the one inside the United States, the Brown University shooting that happened. So let's get into this. What kind of happened over at the Brown University, the shooting, because you're going to hear some very interesting names that's going to pop up. So first of all, you have Mia Tretta, one of the survivors from the shooting. And then you have another one that's Zoe Weissman. She was also one of the survivors at the shooting. That's at the Brown University shooting.
Let's turn now to Providence, Rhode Island, where officials have released the person of interest in the fatal mass shooting at Brown University. The search now continues for the shooter behind this weekend's attack that left 2 students dead and 9 others injured. Officials released this surveillance footage showing the person they believe carried out the shooting on Saturday. Police called on the public to send them any additional video evidence that could help with the investigation, and that includes ring footage and videos taken inside buildings on campus. They say there is no immediate threat to the public at the moment. Now, this is dramatic footage inside a classroom during the attack, and you can see students hiding behind tables and desks during the emergency shelter-in-place order. Police escorted those students from the classroom moments later. Still, the community mourns the loss of their fellow classmates.
A gunman goes into the building, goes into a classroom, kills people, and these girls survive. Now, what's really interesting about these 2 girls is they were part of earlier shootings, and they were part of meeting Joe Biden. One shooting happened in California that Mia Tretta was a part of, and then one happened in Florida that Zoe Wiesman was a part of, and they happened to meet the president. They're talking about, gun control, new gun laws. And this is all coincidence, right? But how coincidental is this that they were both in shootings, one in California, one in Florida. Then they end up in the same classroom, in the same place. Another shooting takes place. They happen to be in on these operations of, taking guns away from Americans, creating more gun laws. So those are some of the things that are really standing out. And then at the same time, there's massive wires. There's well, I don't want to really say wires. It's actually on the inside chatter that's coming out. The chatter that's coming out from the 3-letter agencies that starts with the F mainly on the inside is that they're afraid that Trump is intentionally going to collapse the FBI, that Kash Patel is intentionally going to collapse the FBI. And they're saying that in the future, there's a high probability that the FBI operations are going to be seized by the United States military for all the corruption that they're a part of. Because we already know that these operations is also going to go after the CIA, as a lot of people are expecting that inside of the CIA, the Pentagon is expected to make those moves inside of the storm operations. But the next part of the storm operations inside the chatter, intelligence chatter, is that the military wants to seize the FBI. And that's why Dan Bongino is really upset, is because everything that Dan Bongino is doing, he's hitting a wall. There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of rogue agents, rogue leaders. And as you know, the FBI is stationed all around the world, different countries everywhere. And it's just too big, these rogue elements. And that's why Dan Bongino is really upset. Now the news is coming out today that Dan Bongino is thinking about leaving. So he'll have the next weeks to dig into perhaps leaving the FBI. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. We've been hearing this for a long time. And Kash Patel, Kash Patel is a crazy, crazy anomaly. He's just a fascinating, crazy guy that's making everybody crazy. He moves a lot of information, but he shuts down a lot of investigations. Every time Kash Patel shuts down an investigation, those are military operations behind the scenes. That's what I keep telling you with what's going on with Charlie Kirk. That's why there was military there. That's why the information is coming out that, you had a different person that filmed the shooter on top of the building. And this video, No news agency wants it. The FBI didn't even investigate the footage. Even the defense, the prosecutors want nothing to do with the only witness that saw the shooter, the only witness that recorded the shooting and said that there was no shooting. So this stuff is just going to keep on growing, and it's just going to keep on going with this Charlie Kirk stuff. It's going to be what I do know from the wires, the real wires, is that I've said this before, weeks after, like about a week after the Kirk shooting, is that they're going to go after Turning Point USA. There's a lot of corruption that's going to end up coming out. And as you know, MTG connected to a lot of people, even to Matt Gaetz. They're going to go after these operations from Israel funding the United States. It's going to connect over to espionage. It's going to connect over to a bunch of national security stuff. You know, it's just huge. This is the place that we're at. This is what 17 Operations was telling you, that Israel is saved for last. And that's why we're in these final stages of this huge corruption that's unfolding inside of the United States. And it's all growing. So the same thing over in Australia is really interesting, because on this Bondi Beach, where it happened at the shooting, is that the police intentionally stood down. And back in August, Bibi Netanyahu sent some cables over to, not cables, but just open message over to the Prime Minister of Australia, and told him, you know, that there's a lot of stuff happening inside of Australia. We're getting a lot of reports that there's a lot of anti-Semitism, you know, all of this stuff. It's there's all of this stuff. It's having to do with racism against Israel inside of Australia. There's a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of how can you say, just say it simply, is that there's a lot of terrorist cells perhaps that want to hurt the Jewish people inside of Australia. So that's why Bibi Netanyahu was giving a warning. But the whole thing just sounds like a huge, gigantic setup to stage this powerful event. And we're going to end up getting the real cables. It'll start coming in the real days, and a lot of different information, what happened over in Australia. But what's known is that the police department is just right there, right by the beach, the police department. The police department didn't arrive until after 20 minutes since the shooting began. They didn't arrive in 2 minutes. They didn't arrive in 3 minutes. They didn't arrive in 4 minutes. There was police cars in different regions around the area, and everything was an intentional stand down, because now you have some of the people that were inside of the military, inside the Australian military, who became police officers, and we're hearing reports that they wanted to head to that directions, but they were intentionally told to stand down because they had other people, you know, watching the scene, and they didn't want too many people in there. And it was a huge intentional stand down that was happening over in on this beach. And that's really crazy, because you have all of these people, you know, the J people, the Jewish people that were killed there during the time of celebration. So, like I said, these powerful elite forces connected to the cabal, connected to the Freemasons, connected to information that's been hidden for a long time, because the Rothschilds control all the printing presses back in the 1800s, and they erased a lot of stories of the real creation of the 33rd degree Freemasons, which was actually created by the cabal. It's connected over to really dark, powerful forces. And these powerful forces, rituals, is connected over to Moloch, connected to darker sides of the story of the Bible. It's connected to, you know, to what people call the illuminated light, to what people call Satan at the highest levels. So most people who don't believe in conspiracy. They only think as the 33rd degree Masons are the people who helped shape the world. They gave their husband a job. They built schools. They built university, bridges, buildings. But the secret side of it is really dark at the highest levels. And those operations, like I said, connected to these Zion operations, it's really dark to where they're allowed to kill their own military, to kill their own people. And this was known for a long time. And then until recently, they gave it a name, which is called the Hannibal directives.
Freemasonry. In this very book, Albert Pike said this about Freemasonry. In this very book, he says that Freemasonry is based almost totally on the Kabbalah.
Yes.
Jewish magic.
Yes.
And many Jewish rabbis have admitted this, and they say that in all of the rituals of Freemasonry, you will find the Kabbalah, the system of magic of the Jews. For example, the 30th degree of Freemasonry is the Knights of Kadosh.
Yes.
And it involves skulls and black robes and a knight laying in a coffin speaking from the dead.
Yes.
And all of this turning to the god of the underworld, the gods of the underworld, is all related to Jewish Kabbalah, because they believe in necromancy,
yes,
communication with the dead. And they believe that in the last days, a Kabbalistic master will come upon the earth, and there will be a Jewish utopia, a new world order of the Jews, but they must go along with what are called the Noahide laws and be good Gentiles and go along with Kabbalah. And if they recognize that the Holy Spirit is the serpent. And by the way, that's also taught in the 32nd degree of Freemasonry, that is, the serpent is the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And he is going to encircle the earth.
So we're watching these huge, gigantic false flag events happening, taking place. And we all knew that this was happening. And then just now, he also heard about the arrests going on inside of California. Arrests, I think it was over in Louisiana. The FBI with the police, they uncovered these terrorist cells connected to pro-Palestinian terrorist organizations, terrorist groups. And they have all these strange names like the Lotus, and something Turtle Island, and strange terrorist group names. But this is what Flynn was actually given wires and cables, and he was talking about. This is what we've been talking about, these events to happen. So that's kind of really the scary part, is instead of enjoying a beautiful, peaceful holidays to be with families, all of this chaos is unfolding. And it's Trump. Trump is almost 1 year in office, and they're trying desperately to create all of these different chaos events. At the same time, it's really confusing because the white hats, the military operations, are also staging events, and it's getting really blurry, the fog of war of what's really happening. So just to give you guys a warning, we're inside of this really powerful moment that's happening. And at the same time, people aren't really aware over in Japan of what's happening. Japan is moving slowly towards Taiwan. There's all of these little islands from Japan, and Japan has all of these little islands that they control. And there's one that's right next to Taiwan. And Japan has moved missiles, military equipment, their positioning. And then on one of these small islands, it's given to the United States military as a staging point to go against China. Now, Japan is making huge, gigantic movements throughout the whole region of setting up missiles, setting up all of these different satellites, and they're doing reconnaissance operations. They're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, preparing, for what's going to happen over in China. So this is to kind of let you guys know what's kind of happening behind the scenes, is that, oh, it's okay, it's a little wire that fell down. I was talking about this for a long time, is that China is expected to fall. There's going to be chaos in China. Now, within this collapse that's already happened inside of China that you don't hear about, inside of these 13 provinces, there's 5 provinces that is actively going against the CCP, against the communist regime. China is unstable at this moment, and with that unstable energy, there's certain generals inside of China that have a lot of weapons connected to weapons of mass destruction, certain missiles, a lot of different, just a lot of crazy other stuff, you know, the stuff you hear about what came out of Wuhan, biological weapons, biological chemical weapons, all of this stuff that, you know, that they can release this. So there's kind of panic a little bit on that front, but it's more mainly about the weapons, that one of these generals will get a hold of some weapons fired at Japan, create chaos, and an all-out war can break out, because there's panic also inside of the CCP, as the CCP, China, you have white hats there that they want to form a new united nation. They want to break China apart, and they want to create all of these little countries that will be their individual Chinese countries, but they'll still be united, but it's not going to be China anymore. Now, people don't want this, because when the CCP collapses, then you can have a lot of people that are going to be put to death. Generals, commanders, different presidents, different leaders from different regions. The exposure of all the corruption is going to come out. So everybody's in panic over in China, and they also want to create a war, a false flag event. That's why the US, Japan, Russia, they're all kind of scared that China could set off a war unintentionally by the deep state over in China and attack Japan. So that's why Japan's getting ready. But at the same time, with the military operations already training on these Japanese islands, and then with China along the border, with Russia along the border by Mongolia, they're already sending in military. They're positioning them in certain areas, but they're just saying that it's training. These are just small little operations. We're just moving munitions just in case. But they're really preparing for China to collapse behind the scenes. And if they have to, they will have the means, the necessary equipment, the training, the military to head in. The same with Japan, the same with Taiwan, the same with China, the same with the United States to go into China if they have to, along certain areas if they have to. But most likely the military assessment says that China's going to collapse, and outside military intervention most likely isn't going to happen. So you're watching this stuff unfold and people don't really know the real wires and cables of what's happening over in Japan, with the military there, with Russia there, like I said, up in the northern regions, bringing in a small flank, because they're really expecting for China to fall apart. So we're watching all of these different crazy events kind of unfold in many various different ways. And with this Brown shooting with Kash Patel, you know, they can't find the shooter on a university. If you watch FBI videos that's online when somebody does a shooting, a killing, they can get the footage from all the buildings. That includes all the highway, along the highway. They get it from all the traffic cameras. They get it from so many different places that they can actually track a person all the way through train systems, transit systems, highway systems. But we keep getting these videos of just one video that eventually just pops up, you know, where the bomber just walks by in a few frames. Then you have the shooter, another shooter will just be running. It's just one video. Then you'll get that with this guy from Brown University. But if you see videos on YouTube, the FBI, the local law enforcement, they can track a killer's footsteps, vehicles that they came in, and they can track it through a whole city. It's very interesting to see that. But none of this stuff is coming out on a lot of these things that's happening, from the Charlie Kirk shooting to what happened over in DC, to what's happening now with the shooting over in Brown University. And it's really strange that these two girls were already previously at other shootings, and then they happen to be part of these operations to take guns away from Americans. You know, then they both happen to meet Joe Biden. It's just, you know, it's just very fascinating to me, because it's fascinating because if Kash Patel is covering up a lot of these operations, if they're going to cover up the Brown operations, that means that this was a false flag event that was staged by the military, these operations. And those operations that are being staged are very important operations. And it's all intentional, because it's always going to be connected to Trump signing executive orders, going after terrorist organizations, terrorist cells, exposing something. And it's a huge plan that often the public doesn't even know what's happening. And sometimes a lot of people inside intelligence agencies don't even know what's happening. And often, even at the highest levels inside the Pentagon, a lot of people aren't read in. Nobody knows even what's happening behind the scenes. So these operations are gigantic, huge. And as you know right now, the information's really out there now. The stuff we've been talking about, Venezuela, that they're connected to election fraud. Trump is talking about this. Now Trump is talking about Tina Peters. He just gave his speech saying that she was arrested because she was uncovering the election fraud. Now Trump said he's going to bring out a lot of information, like what I told you was going to happen. Trump just made that statement just recently now. So that's all coming out. And it was just a heavy week, man. I was expected to take a break for the weekend. I didn't look at anything. I was just kind of staying away from the news. Then this morning I turned on the news, and there's a place that I get wires from. Very important people inside the United States, people that I trust. And right when I saw it, I thought, oh God, a bunch of stuff happened. There's shooting in Syria, you know, what's happening there and all of this stuff. It's just, sometimes it's really crazy. I just want a break. I'm trying to fix my sleeping schedule. I'm going to be bringing the news a lot earlier on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and then my special episodes, because like I said, for my gold members, you know, I try to give you 4 videos a week. I really try to give you 4 videos a week. I give you a video on Monday, I give you a video on Wednesday, I give you a video on Friday, and then I try to give you a special video into some deep dives, stuff that you really need to learn, understand what's happening, you know, whether it's intelligent, aliens, what's happening behind the scenes. You know, then with my silver group, I also try to give you 3 videos, but I give you one on Monday, I give you one on Friday, and then I give you an older video from the past month, and something that's a little special from the past month that the gold members saw. The gold members get the first release. So that's how I have everything kind of set up. And then right now, something is really, really important that happened. You saw Trump give a speech today Trump was with the military that's behind him. From Northcom, different commanders, including Pete Hegseth from the Department of War. And Trump signs this now in front of all of them as witnesses that fentanyl is now classified inside executive orders, and the military is watching us because this is going into military records, that fentanyl is now considered a weapon of mass destruction.
That's why today I'm taking one more step to protect Americans from the scourge of deadly fentanyl flooding into our country. With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
That means that this weapon that is being used against the United States, the military has the right to go after these countries. The military has the right to use the Pentagon, all the different agencies, the technologies that they have to go after these countries. Whether it's shutting down banking systems to scramble their communications, even to black out countries, to steal their wealth that's connected, the money that you see over in Wall Street, on the inside of world banks. There's so much things that the Department of War, Trump can now do, initiating war. Like I said, Trump is now a wartime president. And Trump being a wartime president and the Department of Defense is no longer inside a defensive position, but they're in a position to attack now. They're now a Department of War. They're initiating all of these different operations. That also gives them power to go after countries inside of Asia that was moving fentanyl, moving the money connected over to fentanyl. So you're watching a huge, gigantic picture. As we know, fentanyl is coming from China. It's coming into Mexico directly, most of it. Some of it's going to Venezuela. They're using fentanyl down that way, but not as much as the United States is addicted to. So with the military there, those are huge, gigantic comms to China. Those are huge, gigantic operations that's centered against the globalist operations, because they know what banking operations in Switzerland connected to the Vatican treasury as connected to the drug trade. Trump is setting up this huge, gigantic plan, and I told you what's going to happen with the Vatican. One of the biggest exposure in 2026 is going to expose the Vatican operations connected not only to pedo, but to the world drug trade. And this is what everybody's really, really afraid of. And it's just gigantic what Trump is actually doing. So this is the stuff that a lot of people aren't talking about. And I just want to give you a Monday update on very important stuff that's happening. And this all connects back over to China collapsing. China being forced to use the United States microchips from NVIDIA and these operations for the future that's connected over to Genesis, over to Trump's Golden Dome, new advanced, super advanced telecommunication systems, connected to Stargate, connected to the operations of X, running massive, massive AI systems through the world, through what, what people are calling Colossus. Now, all of these different operations, Pete Hegseth is also telling you that now they're going to use AI for war to go after countries, because a collapse of China is coming, one of the biggest countries in the world, and they're being forced right now to use these operations of NVIDIA microchips, because those microchips are directly connected to taking over all of their networks. And they're being forced through powerful operations from the United States that they have to install these microchips inside the government agencies, inside of the military. This NVIDIA is huge, gigantic operations connected to the United States military, connected to a future of securing a world away from wars. There's a lot of stuff happening, and I've been telling you that there is an alliance behind these countries, and everything slowly is coming together. But there's a huge, gigantic fog of war, and inside of this fog, sometimes you can't tell who is staging the false flag events, what's really happening. But what we do know is that there's huge panic inside of Iran, because inside of Iran, the students, the protests is growing. And we always know that there's going to be an overthrow inside of Iran, inside of Israel. And Trump going after Syria, a lot of operations are kicking off over in the Middle East. And I was telling you a few weeks ago that the United States military is slowly building back up inside of the Middle East, and operations are going to secure that that these operations, these certain countries are going to collapse and they're going to form a new government. So that's what we're kind of heading towards, everybody. Just one of the last things is it's finally out there. Stephen Gardner, millions of followers, he's finally talking about the election fraud connected to Venezuela.
Venezuela, why President Trump has our largest aircraft carrier. Now the Navy's down there. We're blowing up ships. I know some of it has to do with taking back control of the Western Hemisphere. I know some of it has to do with blocking oil to Iran and China. I also believe that some of it has to do with Venezuela rigging elections in 70 countries. To help me go through this, I have Emerald Robinson. Emerald, thank you for joining me.
It's so good to see you again, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. So I started picking up on this story in August with billionaire Patrick Byrne.
And I think Emerald Robinson was on there talking about it. But these are the stuff that we've been telling you at the beginning of the year. So you guys are really plugged in. You guys are getting a lot of the information directly first from the real wires behind the scenes. And I'll see you guys all on Wednesday.